Very good morning, brethren and friends. Welcome to our Sunday morning Bible class. Appreciate your presence and your desire to study more of God's Word. This morning, we'll continue our series of study, and in particular, we will be examining this topic, the qualification of elders. Right. So this topic, later on as we go through the lesson, we'll be looking at two main passages. One coming from 1 Timothy chapter 3, and the other one is coming from Titus 1. So in these two scriptures, we have the outline or the list of criteria given by Paul to Timothy and to Titus concerning the qualification expected of someone who aspires to be an elder. So when we talk about the qualification of elders, it's important for us to also understand the context, why there's a need to appoint elders. So I think we should just briefly have that background understanding. And if you could, please turn with me to the book of Titus, chapter 1. Titus, chapter 1. And from verse 6 onwards until verse 9, here is the list of the qualifications. But for us to understand why elders are required, right, you see in verse 9, it says, holding fast the faithful word as he has been taught, that he may be able by sound doctrine both to exhort and convict those who contradict. Right? So one of the primary role of the elders is to teach, to nurture, and to build up the flock, the members of the church. Right? As a leader of the congregation, that's a primary role. And you can see here, there's two main functions. The elders is expected to exhort and also to convict those who contradict. So because the church, when the church is established, right, it's not a smooth sailing journey for the congregation, right? So there were times where challenges will arise, where the times there'll be problems, and as the world around us keep changing, right, there will be threats and there will be exposures to all forms of risks, right? So the elders, this is their primary role here to address all these threats and risks that the church is being exposed to, right? So there will be threats from within the church and also from outside the church, right? From those who preach error, and this is why we need elders to make sure that those errors do not creep into the church. And if you have the time, you can read on your own from verse 10 to verse 16. This Paul is describing the spiritual condition of where Titus is, the place of Crete, the island of Crete. And you can see that they are being described as the locals that are being described as liars, evil beasts, lazy gluttons in verse 12. So in short, the spiritual condition of the people in the island of Crete is in a very dire state. They are experiencing a moral decay, right? So because of the environment that surrounding the congregation there, the threat is very real, and it's a pressing issue, right, for the congregation there to be able to defend themselves, and which is why Paul commanded Titus, right, from verse 6 to verse 9, to appoint elders who are capable men, who are seasoned, who are proven to lead the flock, to protect the flock, right? So that will be the primary function. So that will be the context why elders are necessary. So just as how elders are required back then, elders are also required today, right? So long as there's a congregation, the men of the congregation should all aspire to grow and develop themselves so that one day they can hold the position of an elder. Right, so turn with me also to the book of Acts, chapter 20. In Acts chapter 20, read with me in verse 28. Right, so here again, Paul is instructing or talking to the members or the elders in Ephesus. Right, it says in verse 28, therefore take heed to yourselves and to all the flock, among which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers, right, to shepherd the church of God, which he purchased with his own blood. For I know this, that after my departure, savage wolves will come in among you, not sparing the flock. Also from among yourselves, men will rise up, speaking perverse things to draw away the disciples after themselves. So again, the similar issue was being highlighted by Paul here, right? There will be false teachers, right, coming to deceive, right, members of the congregation who are, especially those who are young in the faith, those who are newly converted, right, their knowledge is not deep yet, right? They may be easily persuaded by all this false teaching. And this is the role of the elders. And elders, the term, can come in different form, right? We use the term elders, bishops, pastors, overseers, right? So the word overseer here simply means to oversee, to watch out the flock, right? So that is in essence the role of an elder. So as you can imagine, elder is a role that is very important, that is critical for the survival of the congregation, right? Whether the congregation will survive and thrive, it also depends very much on the elders, and also together with the collective support and commitment by the members. Right? So as we go through all the detailed qualification, we'll come to the realization that the person who will hold the position of elder is someone that is very strong and grounded in the truth, someone who has a firm understanding of the truth, someone who practices the truth, someone who is able to conduct himself well, right? Able to manage people well, right? So the word qualification simply means it's a skill, quality, or formal achievement that makes a person suitable for a job or task, or that gives you the right to do something, right? So many of us here who are employed or perhaps are looking for employment, when you go into the job application site, right, you will see prospective jobs being listed with the list of skills expected, with the list of experience required, and the qualification expected of that particular candidate, right? So why qualification is necessary, right? For me personally, it's like a filter for the potential employer to basically identify the suitable candidate for that particular role, right? So if you are qualified, means that you have what it takes to perform, right? So qualification usually comes from mainly will be your past experience. It could be the education level that you have, your certification, and so forth. So all this will then form an impression, a picture to your prospective employer, right? Whether you are capable of performing that role. So likewise, when it comes to appointment of elders, not every man right now are qualified to be an elder, but all men can aspire to be an elder. All men can work towards to become an elder. Right? So to become an elder, there will be a qualification that we all need to meet. Right, so before we dive into the list of qualification, it's important for us to point out that the role of an elder, right, there must always be the first thing, which is your heart must be genuine and sincere, that you really want to take up this role. Right? If no one aspires to be an elder, then there wouldn't be elder in that congregation. So the first step is always the desire. Right? You can read that in 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1. Right? Those who desire the role of an elder, which is a good role, a noble role, a noble task, and is commendable. If you also turn to 1 Peter chapter 5, right? 1 Peter chapter 5, in verse 2, Peter said, "Shepherd the flock of God which is among you, serving as overseers, not by compulsion, but willingly, not for dishonest gain, but eagerly, nor as being lords over those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of glory that does not fade away." Right? What Peter is trying to point out in these few passages here is what is the underlying motivation of a person of becoming an elder. Right? To become an elder is not to get personal enrichment, or to chase status, or to pursue something that is not aligned with God's interest. Right? So to become an elder, as mentioned by Peter here, right, is something that is willing, right, not for dishonest gain. It's not because you want to exert your authority over others, but rather you want to lead others, right, to guide others, to be an example to others. And what about your reward? Right? Definitely your reward is not tangible. Right? Your reward is reserved for you in heaven. Right, let's move on. So we'll be going through back and forth between two passages here. We have 1 Timothy chapter 3 and also Titus chapter 1. Sorry. And of all the list of qualification and criteria, I have categorized them into 5 separate groups. And the first one, I call it as the character, right, or the inner trait. So these inner qualities, this list of them that we will go through in a short while, reflects the traits that are expected of the elder, right? These are traits that are necessary to enable a man to be able to watch the souls over others, right? So it is not an easy task, right? You don't just walk up to a new convert and say, hey, today would you like to take on the role of an elder, right? Then they will not have the time to develop, right, to that level of maturity yet to be able to hold that function, right? So there are certain traits that a man has to develop, a Christian man has to develop in order to be able to lead others, right? And the primary reason is because as an elder, you are accountable for the souls of the flock. Right? As an elder, you are God's steward in charge over this matter. And it is a heavy responsibility, and the responsibility shouldn't be taken lightly. Right, next, the next category as an elder, in terms of the type of qualification, is the relationship that you handle and manage. Right? In other words, how you handle and treat others, the people around you. Right? And as an elder, you are not just solely having the right traits, but it is also equally important that in terms of how you manage others, whether it is within the church or outside the church, it's also important, right? Because it reflects your credibility. So your behavior must be consistent, whether in the church or outside the church, because as a leader of the church, right, you are so-called the representative, and all eyes will be on you. And also, it is important that you, as an elder, you are able to manage this particular function well, because as a leader, you are also the bridge between the church and the outsiders. Right? You are the one that connects the church with the people outside the church. Number 3 is the ability. Right? As we have read in Titus 1 verse 9 earlier, the elders must be apt to teach, must be able to hold fast to the truth, right? To defend the truth, to uphold the truth. And the elder must be skillful in handling the word, right? Because the elder needs to be capable of communicating the scriptures with clarity to everyone, right? So that expectation is the elder needs to have an in-depth understanding of the truth, so that he's able to build others up and also able to convince those who are lost or who are being persuaded by false doctrine. Number 3, as an elder, you need to demonstrate that you are capable of leading others. And this is often seen in how you lead your family, right? In your relationship with your spouse, in your relationship with your children. And family leadership is a reflection of your capability as an elder. Which is why Paul mentioned in 1 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 6, I believe. Sorry. Verse 5. It says, "For if a man does not know how to rule his own house, how will he take care of the church of God?" Right. So if it's your own family member and you can't even manage them, you can't even control them, how are you going to control a larger group of people? How are you able to manage God's family? And part of the requirement under the category of family is that the man must be the husband of one wife. Right? The man must not be someone who is adulterous. The man must not be someone who get himself entangled with other women who is not their legal spouse. Right? Because this is a trust issue. Right? If the man can't even manage his relationship well with his wife, and the wife has a trust issue with him, how can the congregation then trust him in his role as a leader of the church? Right? And recently in the secular world, you have seen and read news how the top leadership C-suites of company who get involved in affairs with their employees, with their fellow workers, and the outcome of that is usually immediate termination, right? They are immediately fired, because this kind of relationship is a projection that this person is not trustworthy. Right, and finally, the last category is experience. Right? So again, as I mentioned, as an elder, not everyone at this point in time is qualified, suitable to be an elder, but all can develop and aspire to grow themselves towards that direction. And therefore, an elder should be someone that is experienced, someone who has been tested, someone who has been proven, and someone, so that they are able to handle the various form of challenges. They are able to handle crisis and stress that comes along the way. Right? And in 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 6 says that the role of an elder shouldn't be given to a novice, because they may potentially get puffed up. Right? They may be lifted up, and they may be carried away with their pride. Right? So maybe some people who are could be young in the faith, knowledgeable, and if they're suddenly being given this role, they in their hearts they may be carried away, right? Thinking that they are more than qualified and more competent than the others. Right. In these 5 broad categories, I have allocated the various qualifications in each subgroup, and so it's not in sequential order. If you were to read 1 Timothy chapter 3 and Titus chapter 1, I'm just trying to highlight some of those traits or qualifications will fall under the nature of character. Some will fall under the way of how a person should handle their relationship with one another, and so on and so forth. Right, so we will go through each in detail very quickly, so that you all can distinguish the difference. Because some of the qualification here could be overlapping. Some traits are very closely related, but there is still a distinction between them. Alright, so the first one, in 1 Timothy chapter 3 verse 2 and Titus 1 verse 6, both are also being referenced here. The word here, the elder must be blameless or above reproach. Right? The term blameless refers to a life that is free from credible or valid accusation. Right? It is not a life of perfection. It is not a life where it's spotless or without sin, but rather a life where a person leads with consistency. Yes, an elder is still a human. They may not be perfect. They will still commit error, but the error is perhaps in a way trivial and not sufficient, no solid ground for a person to raise an accusation of. Right? So it could be a genuine and unintended mistake. So a person who is considered blameless is a reflection of a person with integrity. It's also a person who is open to scrutiny, and his character is consistent. You don't see any hidden behavior of immorality. Right? So this person would be well spoken of. He has a good reputation, good standing among the members. He has a good reputation outside the church. He is often seen as someone who is spiritually mature, of course faithful to his spouse, and therefore this trait is very critical, and I believe hence why this was being mentioned first by Paul. For an elder to be blameless means that he does not bring shame and disgrace to God and the church. Right? And the person who is blameless is necessary because as an elder, your life, your conduct is being looked up upon, right? It's being followed by others. So it is important that you maintain this trait because you are the examples to members of the church. The next one is an elder must be temperate. Right? The temperate, the original word, is defined as having a clear mind. It means that you are mentally alert. Right? To be mentally alert means you are not influenced by anything, not influenced by any foreign substance, right? Be it alcohol, drugs, or anything that will cloud your thoughts. Right? So when your mind is clear, you are able to evaluate and assess, right, any condition, any situation more rationally. Right? So when your mind is clear, you are able to judge more appropriately. You are not influenced by emotions or distractions. You do not give in to pressure, and therefore that will form the ground or the basis for you to think and assess any situation wisely, and therefore you can respond rationally. Now, once you have a clear mind, the next trait is an elder must have a sober mind, right? So having a clear mind is one thing. The other aspect is also being able to rationalize and think wisely, to discern, right? So that is what it means by sober, right? So an elder who is sober means that he is able to carefully evaluate, right, all the options available to him, carefully weigh all the options, and what will be the potential consequences and outcomes, and therefore exercise a proper or balanced judgment, right? Because you must understand that an elder's role, they are involved in constantly all forms of decision making, right? The church has is full of people, right, having different requirements, different expectations, and different needs, and elders always need to think on the spot, right? They have to make decisions very swiftly at times, right? So, which is why it's important that elders need to have this kind of trait so that they can make the right decision. An elder is also not given to wine, right? What it means is that he is not under the influence of alcohol, right? Alcohol would cloud or impair a person's judgment, right? So to the point where you have no control over your speech, over your action. And right, you can imagine, I'm sure you have seen people who are drunkard, how they behave, how they carry themselves. It really tarnish that person's image, right? You will bring damage to the reputation, not to himself also, but also to the church, right? And if someone who is under the influence of alcohol would not be able to exercise control or self-restraint, then this will also, make him disqualified, right, to be an elder, right? Because he's not able to exhibit the other necessary traits. Recently, I've watched a short documentary on a submarine, a nuclear-powered submarine. If you have the time and your own convenience, you can also always look up that in YouTube. A nuclear submarine means that it is powered by nuclear, right? When you have a nuclear as a power source, virtually you can operate forever without refueling, which is an essential part for a submarine, right? Because submarine needs to stay hidden, undisclosed, and need to be positioned in strategic location, right? So in that documentary, I've seen how the interior of the submarine, the narrow passageway, all of the crews, the sailors, they are work under pressure, work around the clock. They work like clockwork. They work in shifts, and they are always on alert all the time. But what is interesting is that there is one rule concerning their diet, is they are not allowed, strictly prohibited from drinking any alcohol, right? Because they recognize that even just a slightest sip, they are putting themselves at risk, right? So a nuclear power sub is capable of carrying nuclear warheads. One nuclear power sub can carry 10 to 20 nuclear warheads. And we have seen in history how devastating can a nuclear bomb effects be, right? We have seen in history one nation was bombarded twice, and people and buildings just instantly vaporized, right? Leaving behind only their shadows, right? So all these sailors, they are working under stress, under pressure, given the responsibility that they hold, and which is why they have this particular rule where they are strictly not allowed to drink, right? And likewise for an elder, as an elder, your role is very important. It's not a simple role, and you are responsible for the life, the spiritual life of your flock, and it's very important that your judgment is not impacted. Right. Next is an elder must not be greedy for money. Right. It simply means that the person must not be prioritizing, that the number one goal in his life shouldn't be money. Right. And in particular, this requirement here, this trait here, not greedy for money, also extend to not greedy for shameful gains. Right? Some people love money, and to the extent where they are being motivated and persuaded to do whatever it takes, right? Whether it's through dishonest gain, they will do it, right, in the name of making more money. But that shouldn't be the priority that an elder should hold, because the heart of an elder must be set on prioritizing and serving God and the church. And if an elder who is seen to be pursuing and prioritizing material wealth, right, it's also a question of integrity, right? Whether he's able to handle the church treasury with transparency and trustworthy manner. Right? So if an elder who is seen to be actively, in your conversation with him, is always talking about how to make more money, then this could be a red flag, and this may not, he may not necessarily be qualified to be an elder. Right? And this is a reflection of his ability of being able to manage the funds of the church, definitely not for personal gain. Any mismanagement would definitely erode trust from within the church. Right? So an elder, on the contrary, should instead be content, not be materialistic. This kind of mindset is also a reflection of the person, whether he's spiritually mature. Right? So then again, the mindset that the elder should hold is something, rather than gaining more for himself, he should be contributing and giving. Right? A similar trait to not greedy for money is not covetous. Not covetous simply means not loving money. Right? So what's the distinction between this and the previous trait is that this one refers to the heart. Right? So the inner desire of the elder should be on God and not on money. But the other one, on a covetous man, right, it's more towards the external behavior. Right? So on top of loving money, a covetous man would be driven to get more money, to chase for status, to the extent where he's willing to engage in fraudulent activities, right? Anything that is dishonest, so that he can gain more. The next trait is an elder must be a lover of what is good. Right? His heart must be drawn toward what is morally good and godly. So what you see this in practice is when you speak to this person always is always approachable, is always warm and friendly. This person is always encouraging, right? Telling you positive stuff, right? Always encourage you to do something good. And this person values people who does good, who engage in good works, and perform actions that will lead to good outcomes. So essentially, an elder has to exert positive influence on others, right? To encourage and inspire others to do good and to pursue goodness. The next character would be holy, and this can only be found in Titus chapter 1, not in 1 Timothy chapter 3. And what it simply means is that an elder must be set apart for God. An elder must be devoted to God's purpose. Right? An elder must be pure, right? Living a life of reverence, of deep respect to God and His requirements. In simple terms, holy means that that person is walking with God, right? And therefore he is in the right standing with God. The next trait also can only be found in Titus chapter 1 is self-control. Right? So self-control simply means the strength within. Right? So what it means is the person is able to control his desires or behavior. Right? He is disciplined in exercising self-restraint. Right? He's able to control his emotions. Right? He will not react impulsively. He will not react out of anger or out of pride. And he will always control his emotions and act appropriately. This being self-control also means that he's able to resist temptation, right? Whether it's lust or greed. And an analogy of this is, just imagine a large river flowing along its path with strong currents, but the river does not overflow. So an elder must be able to exercise self-control, and this is a necessary trait so that he is able to influence others positively. Right, so what we have just covered are considered the inner qualities or inner traits of an elder, and now we will move on to the second broad category, which is to examine how an elder should treat others. Right, first of all, an elder must demonstrate good behavior. Right, in 1 Timothy chapter 3 verse 2, that means the elder needs to live in a way that is orderly, right, that is disciplined, that someone, when he or she look up to that person, to that individual, he will respect or admire the person. Right? It's a person who is worthy to be admired because of his appropriate behavior. With good behavior, you are someone who also can be trusted and someone who can be followed. Right? So to have a good orderly behavior means that you are consistent, right, in your conduct, whether it's when you are present in the church or outside the church or in a public setting. You are consistent in the way how you speak, you are consistent in the way how you treat others, and you are also consistent in the way how you conduct yourself. Right? So it's a projection of a spiritual maturity and discipline. Right? A person who exhibit a good behavior is someone who is able to behave rationally, with integrity, and not based on emotions. Right. Secondly, in terms of his treatment of others, an elder must not be violent, and this is mentioned both in Timothy and also in Titus. Right. Not violent, the literal meaning is not a striker. Right. It is simply means not someone who easily lash out, not someone who is harsh, right? Not someone who is aggressive, intimidating, or verbally abusive. Right. But rather someone who is patient, someone who is approachable. Right. Because a violent person is also a reflection of his spiritual level, right? It's a reflection that he is not emotionally mature, right? And so therefore, elders needs to exercise self-control, restraint, as mentioned earlier. And on top of that, the elder must not be harsh or violent in his conduct, in his leadership of the church. Right? So rather than being violent, an elder needs to be patient, needs to be persuasive. His words must be gracious, right? Not with force or not with fear. Next, an elder must be gentle. Right? So again, as you can see, the traits are very similar. Some could be overlapping. But in this case, being gentle here means the elder must be kind, must be gracious. He must be moderate in his conduct. Right? Gentle doesn't mean he is weak, but rather he is... another word would be meekness, right? That is having strength under control. Right? An elder who is gentle does not belittle others. He is patient, and his conduct never threatens others. Right? Next, in his treatment of others would be an elder must not be quarrelsome. Right? So, again, this is very closely related to the earlier trait of being gentle. Right? The distinction between gentle and not quarrelsome is gentle focuses on how a person will respond, but quarrelsome focuses on how a person would engage. Right? So gentle, earlier as I mentioned, is someone how an elder will respond, whether it's with kindness, patience, or restraint. But not quarrelsome means that the person would, in his mind, right, he would think carefully whether it is worthy or not to engage in the conversation or to engage in the argument. Right? If you see that there's no need to have the conversation further, right, because it's meaningless, then as much as they can, an elder would avoid any forms of conflict. Right? An elder would strive to de-escalate rather than escalate a conflicting situation. Right. Next is, in his treatment of others, an elder must not be self-willed. Right. Self-will means that everything must be done my way. Right. It's my way, otherwise it's the highway. Right. Some people always say that. Some people always think that, especially to the older folks, older generation, They felt that they are more experienced than the younger ones, and they feel that all the younger ones should look up to them and not willing to listen, not willing to yield. Right? So a person who is who is self-willed is stubborn, arrogant, right? Who think that he is right all the time. Right? And therefore, this is not something expected of an elder. But rather, an elder must be someone who is open to listen to others, who is willing to yield, who is humble, who is not controlling, right? And willing to listen. Right? Yeah. Moving on, in his treatment of others, another trait of an elder is he is not supposed to be quick-tempered. Right? Quick-tempered means that he is prone to anger or easily provoked. It is not the same as quarrelsome, which we have seen earlier. Quarrelsome means not quarrelsome means someone who avoid unnecessary conflict. Right? Quick-tempered is referring to someone who struggles with their emotions. They love to argue. Is often divisive. Again, it's a trait of being stubborn, who wants to be right all the time. But quick-tempered is someone who is easily irritable. Right? Often reacts without thinking. Right? Some people in their mind, they may think too quickly or overthinking. Right? So the way they carry themselves could be unpredictable and sometimes intimidating. So a simple term to describe someone who is quick-tempered is someone who wants to be heard very loud. Okay? And an analogy is of this trait is someone who is easily and ready to explode anytime. Right? You just need that one particular trigger and he will explode. But in contrast, someone who is quarrelsome is someone who is always looking for opportunity to fight, right? Looking for opportunity to argue, to get involved in conflict. Again, all these are traits that are not expected of an elder. His treatment of others should be in a way where he would receive good testimony, basically good remarks, good standing among those outside the church, right? Not just from within. Right? So an elder must have commendable or good reputation among outsiders and also in the community in which the church is located. Again, as I mentioned earlier, his life must be consistent. Right? He shouldn't behave in a certain way in the church and behave differently outside the church. But that will make him a hypocrite. Right? So an elder must not be seen only morally upright in the church, but also outside. Right? His integrity must not just be shown in his own circle of friends and family, but also those who are outside and those who are perhaps not as familiar as with him. And so the elder's conduct must be in such a way that it will not cause others to discredit or disrespect the church. And given that elders being the leaders of the church, they are the representative of the church, they are the face of the church at times. And so they need to conduct themselves well, because outsiders will judge the church by its leaders. And the elder's reputation is crucial, because whether they carry themselves well would have an impact on others, whether we are effective in our sharing of the gospel to those who are lost. Right? They are the bridge, they are the connection between the church and outsiders. Right? The last trait in his treatment of others is that an elder must be just. Right? Just means that in his dealing with people, in his dealing with others, he needs to be fair, and he needs to be upright. Right? He needs to be impartial in his decision making. Right? He needs to strive to uphold the truth and justice. Right? So, see, in simple words, an elder must be able to treat others right. Again, everyone in the church will look up to the elder for decision making. Right? An elder must be able to make a fair and equitable decision. Right, next, the third category would be his ability. Right, the elder must be capable or able to teach an elder must be able to hold fast to the faithful word as mentioned by Titus 1. So able to teach means that an elder is clear in his communication in terms of how he conveys the message of the scriptures. It is clear, he is able to explain clearly, persuasive, and he is also able to show others how to apply the truth with clarity. Holding fast to the faithful word means that clinging to the trustworthy message. That is the literal meaning. It is a representation of the person having an in-depth understanding of the truth. He is able to discern error from truth. Right? In other words, an elder must be grounded in the truth and committed to uphold the truth. So again, this skill set, this ability is crucial because an elder's role is to encourage and build up others and also to rebuke false teachers. Another aspect of his ability is an elder must be hospitable. The word hospitable simply means lover of strangers, right? Or one who welcomes outsiders. Right? Being hospitable is not just entertaining and hosting people who are familiar to you, but it extends to those who are unfamiliar, people who are vulnerable, people who are in need. And therefore, elders must be generous in terms of his time and his resources. An elder must always be inviting, always welcoming, always warm with others, and so that this would enable him to build connection with those outside the church and to develop trust and also help him in his role to convert others. And the fourth type of qualification we're going to examine is in his marital and family leadership. Very clearly in both passages, 1 Timothy 3 and also Titus verse 1, an elder must be a husband of one wife. The original Greek word means a one-woman man. Right? So basically, an elder must be faithful to his own wife, not adulterous, not involved in, engaged in his life with another woman who is not his legal spouse. Again, as I mentioned in the introduction, it's a reflection of his ability to lead the church. Right? It's a reflection of his integrity. Right? A man who is a faithful husband is a testimony to his inner traits, right? That he is trustworthy and he has what it takes to lead the church in the right way. Right? And having a faithful, being loyal to your legal spouse or your lawful wife, and also on top of that, able to exercise control and leadership in your family, is also crucial to establish a family that is stable and healthy, that will in a way support the elder in his role to lead the church. Just to briefly share in terms of this issue of integrity. Recently in the accounting, if you follow the news in the accounting firm globally, we have this problem of employees cheating on their internal e-learns and courses. So what I mean by that is they will share answers among their peers from top to bottom, from sideways. Some even go to the extent of getting their subordinates to complete the e-learns for them. Right? So e-learns are part of the initiatives and efforts by an organization to build the experience and knowledge of their employees. And so regulators spotted this, and regulators came in hard and sanctioned and fined those firms involved in these practices heavily. And so questions was raised to the regulator and said, why would you want to be so harsh? It's just an e-learn, right? It's just something internal. And so the regulator response is this: if I can't trust you in how you handle your employees in terms of how they complete their e-learns, which, like you said, is an internal thing, and how can I trust you in your role as an auditor when you audit the accounts of entities, right? Especially public listed companies. So simple things like this, you can't even demonstrate your integrity. And how are you going to perform a more heavier role, which is to be a public accountant, right? So again, coming back to this point, right? If a man who is not loyal and faithful to his own wife, right, that speaks a lot in terms of his trustworthiness, and definitely he's not capable to take on a leadership role in the church. In terms of family leadership, 1 Timothy chapter 3 and also Titus 1 talks about an elder must be able to rule his own house well, having his children in submission with all reverence, or faithful children. Right? So it means that an elder is able to exercise proper leadership. He is able to exert strong influence at home. He is able to instruct and guide his children towards the right path. His house is in order. Right? It's a reflection of his wisdom in managing his family, to the point where his children will respect his authority, children who are disciplined, children who are obedient. Right? So this kind of picture, right? Imagine a house that is in order, where children are respectful of their parents, obedient to their parents. It goes to show that the person, the man, the leader of the house, is always present, is always engaging with his family. Right? He would not be able to raise such kind of children, right, putting his house in order, if he's not engaged or if he's not present. Right? So if he's not able to do that, right, he's always disengaged, disconnected, always not present, always out at work, then you can also imagine how he would perform in his role as in his capacity as a leader of the church. Right? He will likewise be disengaged and be disconnected. Right? Which goes to show why Paul reasoned in 1 Timothy chapter 3 verse 5. If a man can't lead his own family, how is he able to lead God's family? The last is his experience. Right? Definitely an elder must not be someone who is a novice. A novice simply means not newly planted. Right? So just imagine a young plant, right? Just planted on the ground, would not have deep roots. Right? Any kind of storm would just uprooted it. So an elder must be someone who is experienced. Some people may have knowledge, but if it's not proven, would not meet this criteria. Right? So an elder must be tested. Right? So that means that it takes time, right, to develop and to grow. Right? That person has to go through different phases of growth, to the point where he's spiritually matured and ready to take on the role of an elder. So there will be people in the congregation who has the desire, who has the right mindset, but he is not ready yet. Right? So it takes time for that person to be firmly grounded and to be spiritually mature. Right? So it is crucial that a person must be tested, must be seasoned, must be proven, so that he is not lifted up, not be arrogant, right? Thinking that he's being appointed because of his own talent or knowledge or certain particular skill set. Right? Right, so putting it all together, we are not supposed to go through this as like a form of checklist, but what I'm trying to highlight here is that if a person has one trait, right, usually he would be able to exhibit all other traits all together. So when we put all these things together, all these attributes, it paints a picture of a man with integrity, right? A man who is genuinely desire to serve, right? A man who has his priority on God, on his work, a man who is prudent, a man who observes and thinks carefully before he reacts, a man who avoids trouble, avoids conflict, a man who is just, who is fair in his dealings with others, a man who is not a hypocrite, right? His behavior is consistent, whether he is present in church or outside of church, a man who is wise in his conduct, approachable, warm, welcoming, a man who is skillful in teaching and has a deep understanding of the truth, a man who is faithful to his own wife, is capable of leading his family well, children who are obedient and disciplined and respectful, and a man who is experienced, right? That means that he is proven and able to handle conflicts and pressure. So in summary, the role of an elder is a noble role, a noble task that all men in the congregation should consider or aspire to be one day. The work of an elder is something where you must have the right desire, right? The appropriate desire. You shouldn't be aspiring to be an elder because you want to achieve certain personal agenda. Right? You want to enrich yourself, or you want to chase a particular status, or simply you just want to be domineering. Right? And remember, the right desire would be wanting to lead, wanting to serve, and the reward reserved for you is in heaven. As the world involves spiritual work, and therefore the criteria that we have just gone through would not be the same criteria that you would see in terms of how the secular world will appoint leaders. Right? In the secular world, people appoint leaders based on their capability to bring the organization forward, right? To increase the bottom line, right? To distribute more dividends and more profits. But this is very different when it comes to church leadership. An elder should not be leading with personal for personal gain. And so therefore, to be an elder, it requires time. And eldership readiness would require some level of spiritual maturity and also a spirit of humility. So the role of an elder is crucial and critical, and therefore we cannot take the appointment of a person to be an elder lightly, because elder's role is to guard the church from all forms of threats, whether it's from within or from outside, and to ensure that the church will continue to exist and continue to thrive. Right? So the position of an elder is always in demand. Right? The current leaders that we have in the church will not be with us forever. Right? So the next generation, the next group of men need to grow and need to prepare themselves to serve in such capacity in the future. Sorry, my lesson overran by 5 minutes. I guess that's not enough time for us to have Q&A, but again, if you have any questions, comments, you can reach out to me separately and we can discuss about it. I hope the lesson has given you some insights of the qualification of an elder and help you to understand the significance of this role better. And I think we can end the lesson this morning. I all arise for the closing prayer.